Good morning, West Michigan, and welcome to 8 West on this Monday, the first Monday in May. I'm Terri DeBoer. We've got Laura Velasquez hanging in here with us today. Pretty quiet weather day.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, actually pretty quiet weather over the weekend after what's been a really active weather pattern, so we're certainly thankful for that.
Our all eyes focused on, of course, what was the developing international story from overnight. Osama bin Laden, after almost 10 years of September 11th, the attack on America. Amazing to think that he was killed overnight in a raid by the United States forces.
Just not exactly what I or probably anybody was anticipating to hear this morning. I get up every morning, Facebook and Twitter comes right to my phone, and 1:30 the alarm goes off, and that's exactly what I'm looking at and reading it over and over again, and you just don't believe your eyes.
Right. Well, we've got Rick Albin, our political reporter, who is already en route to Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. And Rick, you're joining us now to just kind of talk about, I know you were actually working for Congressman Hoekstra on September 11th of 2001, so you must have big memories.
Yeah, it's actually very poignant for me because a few hours ago I passed by Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where Flight 93 was forced down on September 11th, and I was just thinking about the numerous trips back and forth that we made during that time period, remembering that early on after the September 11th attacks, there were no air flights. So everything was being done on the ground, and I'll be on Capitol Hill in a little while, and it's always very stirring, but it's very interesting to me, kind of the impact it has had, because it's been 10 years. In fact, people have been saying it's been almost 10 years that we've been looking for Osama bin Laden. Well, it's been well past 10 years. The Clinton administration was looking for Osama bin Laden, and the bombing of the USS Cole and other things that were attributed to him. But when you think about the impact that this individual has had on our lives, just think about it for a minute. When was the last time you were at an airport? How much different is that than it was 10 years ago? When was the last time you were at a federal building or many public buildings? How much different is that? 15 years ago, if we would have seen a backpack laying unattended, we would have taken it to lost and found. Today, we call a bomb squad. And those are some of the differences that we have made in our lives because of the attacks that this individual either masterminded or helped to prepare against us, both in the United States and abroad. And the fact that the United States government has worked all of these years and apparently successful yesterday in finding him suggests that when President Clinton and President Bush and then President Obama all said that they were serious about getting Osama bin Laden, that they were indeed serious.
Rick, I think it's pretty incredible. I think so many of us just kind of assumed that we would never have a resolution to this. They may never find him just because of the terrain in that part of the world and how difficult the search had been. How surprised are you, and how confident are you hearing from your sources that this really is Osama bin Laden?
Well, first of all, I'm very surprised because there are any number of things that could have happened. He could have just gone so deep underground and quit communicating that we would have never heard from him again. His health wasn't great, or so we were told anyway. I thought it was completely possible he could have died of natural causes, and we would have never known it. He could have died in a drone attack, and it would have been, so much debris, so many rocks, we would have never found any remains. So I think it is far more likely we would have never had an outcome to this than having this kind of an outcome, and particularly given that it was our special forces and an amazing effort on the part of the special operations part of the armed forces, and of course all of the intelligence gathering. As far as being certain, I must tell you that I don't think that this or any president of the United States would go to the networks and say, we want to go on television, do a live Sunday night event, although postponed by about an hour, and say that we have Osama bin Laden unless he was 100% sure. And I know they're doing some further DNA testing today, but there is no upside in getting this wrong. So I have to put my faith in the people that were on the ground and doing this, that they got the right guy.
And just like we mentioned earlier, Rick, nobody exactly expected to hear this morning. What do you expect to see? We know you're a few hours away when you get to Washington this afternoon.
Well, I think there'll be several things. One is there is the side of this that says, look, the United States said when we were attacked on September 11, 2001, that we would hunt down the perpetrator, the people responsible. It has taken a long time, but we have done what we said we would do. And I think in Washington, D.C. particularly, there will be a sense of some satisfaction that we have said to the rest of the world, look, yep, it took a long time, but we did what we said we would do, and I think that sends an important message. But there's another component to this, too, that you've already talked about on a number of different areas, I know in the Today Show this morning and elsewhere, that there will be a certain level of security awareness because Osama bin Laden was probably not the operational head of al-Qaeda, and al-Qaeda looks much different today than it did 10 years ago. But it still exists in splinter organization, and there may be those who are still loyal to him that will want to have some type of retaliation. So I would expect to see security pretty heightened in the nation's capital, not that it isn't always, but I think that could be a byproduct of this. And I think the other thing that we're going to hear a lot about, and hopefully we'll be talking with some of our lawmakers, is this doesn't end anything. I mean, there's still a war on terror. There are still people that wish to do us harm. Al-Qaeda still exists, even though it's in a different form than it was. But I think that the overriding message is going to be, we said we were going to get him, and we did.
Well, thank you so much, Rick. I know you're heading to the nation's capital. We also will have a complete crew there associated with you, and you'll be providing us with live coverage on all of the developments over the next couple of days. And we know that Rick has just incredible contacts because of the time that he spent in Washington, D.C., and from the number of years that he's been our political reporter. So really wonderful insight and perspective that Rick can give to the viewers here in West Michigan.
Yeah, and it's been a huge week and weekend of news, and we know that, like you just said, this is not something that's over. This is just something that happened, a really big part of it, but this is going to continue, and it will be interesting to see what happens over at least the next couple of days.
Right, and interesting, we were just kind of talking a little bit about the time that's passed. I take myself back 10 years ago. I was here, I was working, sitting in the 24-hour tracking center when we watched the first and then the second plane go into the World Trade Centers, and then, of course, all of the people here in West Michigan who directly knew or were related to people who were killed on that day. Our former reporter, Brad Edwards, his aunt was killed. She was a passenger on the plane that crashed into the Pentagon. And then since then, of course, we've had so many people, men and women in our military service who have been fighting this war on terror, who have given their lives to in the effort to really try to secure freedom for the country and for the world.
And it stands to show how much everybody does love this country. My sister's husband is a member of the armed forces, and it hits really close to home. This is something that if it didn't affect everybody at that exact moment over the last 10 years, I'm pretty sure it's touched somebody in some way.
That's right. So, of course, we'll continue with our live coverage as the developments warrant, and, of course, be sure to stay with 24-Hour News 8 as we see Rick Albin's reports here over the next couple of days. Great insight coming our way.
Absolutely.